Do you have 12 by 12 pattern paper that becomes 3 by 4 cut aparts or 3 by 4 designs? Hi, I'm Jess from jesscrafts.com and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty time and supplies. So let's get making. Today I want to share with you 4 ideas for how you can use these 3 by 4 cut apart papers with some additional 12 by 12 pattern paper to make A2 size cards, and you can do it without making scraps as well. These are my 12 by 12 paper busting templates, which means that they show you how to make an A2 size card, or several really, without making any scraps by cutting the paper precisely and then showing you a sketch about how to assemble it. And today I just wanted to highlight 4 of them that work really well with A2 size cards. So I have 12 by 12 paper busting template number 2, and it uses 1 piece of 12 by 12 patterned paper and calls for you to pull in these 3 by 4 cards or 3 by 4 cut aparts for the embellishment area. Now you can cut them from these kind of papers, or you can just cut them from any old paper, like any old 12 by 12 paper, and just have them there as well. And that's something in general I want to say about you. If you have 3 by 4 cut apart paper, great. This is like an idea or a video full of ideas for how to use that. But if you still like some of these fast card ideas and you don't have these, you can basically make your own by taking a piece of patterned paper that's like maybe a little bit more tone on tone or subtle, and basically make your own cut apart. So you cut these down to 3 by 4, which you can do without making scraps. And then if you notice, a lot of times what happens on these 3 by 4s is they are using either a large sentiment or they're combining a sentiment with an image. So some images, sentiment, image, etc. Here's like a really clear example of that, like image sentiment version, and then something like this where it's just mostly a sentiment. So either go to your die cuts or stamps, find a large stamped sentiment, or go to your die cuts, your pre-printed embellishments, your stamps, and find an image to combine with a sentiment, and you make your own. And I did a similar video for using these that sometimes come in 6 by 8 pattern paper packs, and you'll see some similarities between the 2 videos because it is a focus on these 3 by 4 cards, but I just want to make sure that you have some ideas for them. So we have 12 by 12 paper busting template for A2 cards number 2, 4, 11, and 15. And these all have their own individual videos where I go more deeply into them, but today I'm going to focus on how they work well for 3 by 4 cut aparts. Before we look at the individual card ideas, I did just want to highlight if you want to cut mats to put around your 3 by 4 cards, then I like to do 1/4 inch mats, and I find that this works out really well when you're starting with 8.5 by 11 patterned paper, because you can measure it to 3 1/4 by 8.5 to use the 8.5 side, and then if you cut that in half to 4 1/4, you're going to get the mats that you need to go around a 3 by 4 cut apart without making additional scraps. So this piece still exists, of course, and you can cut a few more evenly out of it, but there's not like little pieces created, whereas if you cut it on its 11-inch side, you're going to have more scraps. Let's take a quick look at how to assemble any one of these templates. So I have template number 2, and so I'm going to show you just quickly how I would do one card with it. So basically the template will use the entire piece, and then you will add your 3 by 4 cut aparts into it. And so it shows you here, it kind of styled a little bit differently, but basically you're going to need a 4 by 6 inch piece, and you can cut 6 of those evenly out of 1 piece of 12 by 12. And then you need 1 piece that's 4 by 5 1/4. And the other piece is going to be 4 by 3/4 of an inch. All those measurements are right there on the template. And as I said before, I believe, I think I mentioned, you can download that for free. But you can then take that little strip and put it across. That's basically the card. I am going to put it on a colored card base because I'm going to be skipping the mats today, but if you look here on the sketch, it does tell you mat sizes. I don't put a mat in this template around the 4x5¼ inch piece because that's the card base. You could make it a colored card base. You have some options there. And then I will put my 3x4 piece on top of it. This particular 3x4 piece I didn't put a mat on because it kind of has its own mat essentially, but you can add that layer, you know, do what you like to kind of jazz up the card. But as you can see, this is a really quick way. You cut them down to 4x6, you cut that 3/4 inch off, and you have some fast cards using up those 3x4 cut aparts. I do find it helpful to contain, if I'm like, especially if I'm making multiples, my card base, my pieces, etc. in these envelopes, and I usually have them linked in the video description below. So this is template number 4. You would be cutting your 12x12 paper evenly into 3x4 inch pieces. You would get 12 of them. You can do a mix where if you have a sheet of 12x12, of 3x4 cut aparts and you don't like all of them, you can turn some of them into this other piece if they're double-sided. Like so, if I didn't like this one, I could turn it over and cut it on the diagonal like I'm going to do with this piece here. So here's my second piece of patterned paper in this instance. And I'm going to take the 3x4 inch piece. This is very similar, or this is kind of this is actually the same thing as what I did on my 6x8 video, but we're going to cut it on the diagonal. So be sure to follow all manufacturer's safety instructions when using tools like paper trimmers. We're going to put the 2 corners on the trimmer so that we can cut it on the diagonal. You could measure this with a ruler or something, draw a line for yourself if that's more helpful. A lot of times there's paper trim, like the slide paper trimmers have like a wire guide to help you with that kind of thing. And so then now, similar, this particular cut apart kind of has its own border around it already. So I can just put these cute little chicks here in the top and bottom corner. As you see, it works with directional patterned paper, and I'm again choosing a colored card base just to add a little bit more fun and interest to it. I think that a mat around this is also great. You do you. Next up, we have template number 11. I did a deep dive video about this recently, but I'm going to be a little bit quicker this time. So you're going to need 1x4 inch pieces and 3x4 inch cut aparts. I show you how to get it out of a single piece of pattern paper. This is particularly great if you have just a few of the 3x4 cut aparts that you don't like. But this is also a great stash buster because while you can get 1x4 inch pieces perfectly out of a 12x12 piece of patterned paper, you're gonna get a lot of them. And you're gonna need a lot of 3x4s to go with it. Or you can go into your scrap pile and find something that is maybe already 4 inches and or is like, you know, even just 1 inch scraps and try to cut 4 inches out of them. So you can try to find some 1x4 inch pieces that coordinate in your stash. And so, but if I was cutting it out of a new piece, then I could cut them down to 3x4s and then down to the 1x4s. If I'm using a whole piece of 12x12 pattern paper, I could cut it, 12x1 and then cut them into 4, there's different ways of getting at it. I'm sure that you can figure that out. And then in the sketch, I do call for you to cut a little banner edge. I'll quickly go over that. When I cut a banner, I cut a line where I think the center is, and then I cut on an angle towards that center cut. And I then have the banner piece that I need, and I can add that to the card like so, and it'd be completed. Let's look at our last template, 12x12 template number 15. Now, this one doesn't show a 3x4 on it, though I believe when I did the first video, I used that, but it's kind of like, I just wanted to show you, like, this is a really simple way to use up some 12x12 pattern paper. It does make 12 cards, but this is very similar to what you saw in the 6x8 video, where I took a 4x6 inch piece, which you can cut perfectly out of a 6x8 piece of pattern paper or a 12x12 piece of pattern paper. And then I am just going to cut it on the diagonal. Now I have directional pattern paper here. The other side is not, though. That's key. I'm going to be able to use one as a piece of directional pattern. I'm going to be able to use one of them as shown in the sketch, but I will show you also my other idea. So 4x6 piece of pattern paper. I do give you like places you can mark, and then, you know, you could put like a little mark here and here. I give you the measurements to measure down, and then line it up in your paper trimmer. Or you can take a 4x6 inch piece, go, okay, that looks about halfway, and cut. And then you have two diagonal pieces. They may not be perfectly the same size. They are not in this instance. I don't know which way is easier to show it to you, but that's okay. They don't need to be. And I'm gonna use a colored card base because, again, it will help with the fact that this doesn't call for a mat, although you can use a mat if you like. And so here, the sketch calls for you to place it like this. If you wanted them all to look like the sketch, this piece is not going to work because it will be upside down. However, what I would recommend doing is, if you're using directional pattern paper, just to have some of them on the top instead. I think that you can see the card is cute, whether the diagonal piece is on the top or the bottom. But basically, since it would, you know, I'm trying to be clear about like, how do you get this exact look, just in case. I don't want anyone to be too confused. And then I kind of like maybe go with like a little bit deeper dive in my videos, like, okay, here's what, you know, some other tips that I would do with it. So I would create one with it on the bottom, the other with it on the top, and I would have 12 cards. One reason this actually works really nicely with these cut aparts is because when you do those cut apart sheets, they have 12 of them. There are 12, you can cut 12 3x4s perfectly out of a 12x12 pattern paper. So if you combine this with either cut aparts or a second piece of 12x12 pattern paper, you're gonna get 12 of these, and you're gonna get 12 3x4 cut aparts and make some really cute, easy cards. I wanna take just a quick second to let you know that paper busting template number 1, 12x12 paper busting template number 1, which doesn't really follow my typical rules because normally I just make one specific design with one piece of 12x12 paper, but this was like before I had set in my mind what I was going to do with these. They do call for 3x4 cut aparts. So all of these also work, and I've never made them into separate sketches or anything like that, but this is not quite as fast or easy to explain. I will try to link this video though so you can see those ideas. So there we have our 4 fast, easy ideas for combining 12x12 pattern paper with 3x4 cut aparts to use our stash in our card making. You can download all of these templates individually at the links in the video description below. You can also purchase a pack in the Etsy shop as a way of like, you know, kind of just getting them all at one time, making it a little bit easier to print. And then you can add a little sticky note about which ones you would use for your 3x4 cards. I hope this kind of like gives you a little bit of added value, way of like kind of thinking about and going to your stash of templates quickly to combine with your stash of paper and be like, okay, this is how I'm gonna like just bust through a bunch of paper today, but not make the same card as many times. Like, you know, you would be making possibly 12 of this card, but you also you can combine it, because if you notice, this template 2 and template 15 both use 4x6 pieces essentially. And so you can combine them. And I've talked about things like that too in other videos, like how do you combine templates so you don't have to make 12 of the same card. But if you found this video helpful, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.